Hey, it's Jacob here at AER. Today I'm going to show you how to properly wire up the intrinsic switch into an EPIC 1 and an EPIC 2 control panel, and then show you how the wiring's set up from there. Here's the EPIC 1 control panel. They will have a single starter control, and then they'll have only a single intrinsic switch. That's the difference between this and an EPIC 2. And here we have the EPIC 2. Now you can see the difference. It has two starter boxes and it has two intrinsic switches instead of like the EPIC 1 having only one of each. All right, the tools needed for wiring these up, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver and a small flathead screwdriver. I'm going to show you how to wire up the EPIC 1 and EPIC 2s. I'm not going to go over how they mount to the walls or stands. They do not come pre-drilled, so you will have to drill the holes in the bottom for the electrical wiring. We do send them with fittings for the C1D1 cable. They come with a bag for the intrinsic switch cable. They come with the fittings for that. It comes with mount tabs to mount to rail systems that you want, and it does have the key for the door. All right, when you get to the lid internally here, you'll have 4 latch points. You'll pull all those latch points out, and then you'll be able to lift up on the lid. Before you just remove the lid, make sure you disconnect the ribbon cord that goes from the control panel to the face. You'll then just pull up on the cord. Now that I have the cover off, I'm going to install this intrinsic switch onto the rail system. It has 2 tabs that you open up, and when you place it onto the rail system, you'll actually press each tab in to lock it on each side of the rail system. Now it's locked in place. All right, I went ahead and installed both of the intrinsic switches. Make sure when they're installed, they are more than 2 inches away from a 480 volt power supply. The reason for that is you don't want any loose wire possibly coming over into a safe environment of where the intrinsic switches are and possibly arcing over, and then now you have a 480 volt current going out to the explosive area. All right, now to wire up the intrinsic switches, you'll have a pre-installed wire that comes from the BMS board. The BMS board is a sub-board that has multiple different options for different alarms and sensors for the system for what you want it to run or monitor. So you'll take these wires, you'll take the red and black wire, and they will go to number 1 and 3 slot on each of the intrinsic switches. They already have a jumper to be able to go to both intrinsic switches. I'm going to go ahead and wire those up real quick. All right, now that I have the wires installed on the intrinsic switch for the power, I'm going to hook up the wires that are actually for the board. You'll have 2 different jumping legs. One goes to the G2 slot and a pair goes to the G4 slot. You'll have a left and right wire. They will go to the left and right respective slots on the intrinsic switch. They will go to number 7 and 9. So the left wire will go to 7, the right wire will go to 9 on both intrinsic switches. All right, now that I have the wires hooked up on the intrinsic switch, you will then come out to the outside of the control panel and you'll drill the respective holes where you want them to install the fittings for both the C1D1 cabling and the fitting for the intrinsic switch cabling. To install them, when you drill the holes, you'll just take these fittings that are included when you get the panels. They will just slide through, and then they have a locking nut that will just go through and thread onto the back side of it. You do that for both of them, and the fittings are then installed. All right, now that we have the fittings installed, I'm going to take the intrinsic switch wire, we're going to put that one through the smaller fitting, and then to lock this down, you just twist this nut over until it locks the cabling down. Once you get that locked in, it is actually a waterproof tight seal, and it locks in the cabling. All right, now that you have the wires run through the fittings, you'll take your intrinsic switch wires and you will wire up the 2 wires from each into the intrinsic switches and the number 4 and 5 slots. All right, now we're going to put the wire in for the C1D1 cable that are actually to your mixers. You'll do the exact same thing as the float switch wire, the intrinsic switch. You will take this and it will slide through the fitting. Once you get it through, you'll then just tighten down this outer nut, and then it locks in the wire as well. All right, now I've got one mixer already wired into one side. We'll then take the other corresponding 3 wires and they will go into the 3 respective holes of the other starter box. Once you get that done, it will look like this. All right, you'll then take the 2 ground wires from each of the mixers. You'll then screw them into one of the provided ground ports that are in the control panel. All right, when you get everything wired up here, now is when you need to have a certified electrician actually do the finish wiring into the actual main on-off switch of the control panel. All right, when you go to reinstall the face panel, you'll take the ribbon cord. It has a set way that it has to go in. You'll have a little slide lock on one side. Always remember that the ribbon cable will actually go against the BMS board. If you have to force this plug in, that means it's not the right way. Do not force this in. It should slide in relatively easy when you're ready. Now when you get the face panel back on, all you do is you lock in all 4 of the little corner tabs, and the Epic 2 and Epic 1s are back together. And that's how you properly wire up the Epic 1 and the Epic 2 control panels. Thanks for watching.